started. Good evening. Welcome to the fourth in our series of 5 programs that we call Sister Bay Stories, featuring, in most cases, families and their businesses in Sister Bay. But tonight, the topic will be schools of Old Sister Bay, presented by Nyla Small, many of whom you know. And I'll talk a little bit more about Nyla and the program tonight in just a minute. The other activity I want to point out that's been going on really all summer long is really a remarkable one that is involving the building and grounds crew that we have here. So there's a group of guys who work every Monday and then a number of days in between Mondays to help keep this place in shape, and it shows. Particularly if you have looked at the Anderson House recently. The work that they have done in repairing and repainting the Anderson House just makes you proud of what that looks like. So even though we don't typically get down to details about the folks who do this work, and I should add, it's not just what I just mentioned. It ranges from raccoon extermination to tree stump removal to the maintenance of the flower beds, to what I just described. And so I'm just going to read you the list of folks who have been involved in this. So we are thanks to Bob Jischke, who is the team leader for this effort, Bill Zelnio, who is the volunteer coordinator, and then in alphabetical order, Dave Anderson, who is here, Steve Goff, I don't know if I saw Steve, Eugene and Barbara Jarvis, who keep the flowers looking like they do, Steve Mann, who's here, Cal Pearson, Don Provo, Tom Sadler, Jim Springer, Fuzzy Sundstrom, Mark Weborg, Bob Ziegler, and their various friends and relatives. So I'm going to just say, let's give them a hand. Let's see. To talk about tonight's program. You know, we're focusing on what we call Sister Bay area schools, and it's not just a focus on the Sister Bay school that folks well know, that used to be at the top of the hill on 57, but also the other schools in the area. So it will include, Nyla will include a discussion of the Appleport school that is at Old Stage and ZZ, and the Wildwood school that is now the Liberty Grove Administration Building, and the Liberty School that is in the German settlement that is now a residence. And then I will talk about some of the other schools in Liberty Grove as well. I don't want to steal Nyla's thunder, but I do want to talk about one of the schools in particular, and that is the old schoolhouse. So if you drive down into Sister Bay, you know the Visitors Center at 42 and 57, right? That little log building. That was the Sister Bay area's first schoolhouse. And that has been used as a Visitors Center up until this year, when they decided to do something else with the Visitors Center. So we asked the village whether or not we could use that little one-room log schoolhouse for a children's program. And they agreed to that. And in August, we had the first children's program, and it was great. The children were sitting in their little desks, working on their slates, and hearing what it was like to go to a one-room school many, many years ago. You might have seen that we got a little bit of publicity in the Pulse about that too. So what's interesting about that school, a couple of things, how and when it started, and who attended it. So keep in mind that the school was built in 1866. And that's the year after the Civil War ended, and it was used through 1883. So 1866, 1883. Okay, so now class is in session. Who was the President of the United States when the school was built in 1866?
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson, very good. You're on a roll. So now, who was the president when the school stopped operations in the spring of 1883? No takers. I know you were going to guess Garfield, but he was assassinated, and the president in 1883 was Chester Alan Arthur. There you go. So I know another question we want Nyla to address, though, besides some of these dates, is just some of the personal stories. So Nyla will address whether it's true that the rumor that when they went through the old school and the schoolhouses, they found a desk in it with a pack of cigarettes that belonged to Dickie Burris. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Now, in this booklet about the school, about the 50th anniversary, again, now I'm just going to take one little piece here. The late Leonard Swenson wrote about how this school got started. And it's just, let me just read a little piece of this. Our educational facilities had a very humble beginning, as money was scarce in those early years when the only income was for the wood that was cut and delivered to the docks. Then the groceries and supplies you had to have were deducted, leaving very little cash. This did not discourage the little group of settlers, 6 in number, from trying to reach their objective. This is in 1865. They had a meeting at a guy's house, and they formed a little board. One of the members of the board was a guy who couldn't read or write himself. They had a budget in the first year of $200, and some of the things that they used that $200 for, pretty interesting. That was for the building, the equipment, and 3 months' worth of teacher's salary. One man offered to build 6 benches for $18. Another agreed to furnish a year's supply of wood for $10. A stove was purchased for $20, and a water pail and dipper was 86 cents. So he goes on to talk about the first teacher getting paid $35, but the last thing I'll read here is about the students who went there. It says, many hardships and sacrifices were made to gain the knowledge in those early years. As far as 12 miles a day, some had to walk through only a footpath, leaving home before it was light out and returning home after dark. Many of the students were full grown, as they had no training before coming to America, and coupled with the desire to learn the American language, they took this opportunity. So, you know, one of the things that strikes me about all the Sister Bay stories that we do is the element of community. And this is sort of an expression of that, what I just read, and an expression of how the community always was looking out as well, of course, for its children. So with that, I want to talk about our presenter, Nyla Small. So Nyla, again, many of you know Nyla. Nyla Whitman Small, so the Whitman name is also familiar. Native of Door County, grew up in Ellison Bay. Her parents owned the Viking Grill. There is a connection to the Whitman house, but you'll need to talk to Nyla afterward to understand it. She attended Ellison Bay School for 8 years and then on to Gibraltar High School, went on to cosmetology school, married Robert Small. Nyla has 2 daughters, Susan and Stacy, and 2 granddaughters, Lauren and Ashlyn. She lives in Sturgeon Bay. She has worked as an administrator for Bayview Lutheran Church, has done a number of volunteer gigs across the county and in Sturgeon Bay. And notably for tonight's presentation, Nyla in the 1880s began volunteering at the Door County Historical Museum. 1880s? Nyla goes way back. In the 1980s, sorry about it. She began volunteering at the Door County Historical Museum, helping with inventory and creating displays when the new edition was completed. So we are the beneficiaries tonight of Nyla's work on the story of the schools of Door County, and we appreciate that very much. Please welcome Nyla Whitman Small.
Thank you. I'm going to just, before I begin, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we did all this research on the schools. There was 3 of us. 2 of us worked at the museum and 1 was a teacher at Southern Door. And we located in all the plat maps all the schools that were ever in Door County. It was quite an interesting thing to do because I've never really kind of put the northeast corner of the southeast, I can't remember, range 27 or whatever, but we did all that and then sent it over to Holly Hansen, who works in the real property area at the government center, and she looked a lot of this up. She loved doing that kind of stuff. And then from there we had the maps made, which I have over here, all just the all the Northern Door schools, all the Gibraltar area schools. And we have that, there was 26 schools at one time in that area. Plus there were 4 schools in Washington Island. And I guess I haven't counted up the central part of the city, the central part of the county or Southern Door, but there were many, many schools. And when you look at it now, all we have is Southern Door, Sturgeon Bay, Sevastopol, Gibraltar, and Washington Island, 5 school districts. Although Yelmer Holland states the first organized school was established in Sturgeon Bay in 1856, he goes on to note that private schools were being taught in the wilderness. Notices were placed in the newspaper and each town petitioned for a school district to be organized. At one time, I already said this, but there was 26 schools in Northern Door and 4 in Washington Island. Tonight, I'll be focusing on just Liberty Grove schools and Sisterly School. As immigrants began arriving, a need for a school was realized. In 1865, a group of men from Liberty Grove met for the purpose to provide a school to educate children. They were P. Johnson, T. Anderson, Hans Gunderson, Søren Olsen, Andreas Johansson, Engelbert Torgerson. These 6 and another T. Torgerson, who was absent because of an accident, were all of the eligible voters qualified to attend. As sometimes happens today, the absent Torgerson was elected clerk of the school board, which was organized. They ended by choosing a site with an available water supply in the town of Liberty Grove, located on the only regulation road between Bailey's Harbor and Sister Bay, which we believe was the road that went presently past where the former fruit growers canning company comes, or Old Stage Road. This district included Little Sister, Sister Bay, Appleport, Raleigh's Bay, and Wildwood. It is believed that the school was near the 3 springs. There was land designated by a George Thompson for a school at Marshall's Point, but no record of it being bought or sold. And I just recently found out that there was also land designated for a school by the same George Thompson near where James Ingrison's gallery is located. We still don't know where this school was. The committee, or the school board, was determined to keep within the $200 budget. This was sort of mentioned before. The frugal financiers voted to offer a skilled workman $1.50 a day to build an 18 by 24-foot log building. They couldn't offer a higher wage as they wanted the $200 to cover the cost of the building, school equipment, and the teacher's salary for 1 year. Surprisingly, they had no takers, even after it was put out for bids a second time. Hans Gunderson had received a good education in Norway, and he'd even taught over there for several years. He had married, and when they had a son, and when he was 2 years old, his wife died. In his grief, he decided to take the boy and sail to America. He landed in Door County in 1855 and took up a homestead 3 miles north of Sister Bay. Finally, in desperation, he agreed to erect the building for $100. And he did a fine job due to his keen interest in education. Authorized to reward a teacher with a monthly salary of $30, The clerk sent word to Chicago advising the city's unemployed professionals of an opening. In due time, a young female arrived, but her credentials, quite naturally, were for Illinois, not Wisconsin, and the board was unwilling to take the chance of stepping on the state of Wisconsin's toes. She was sent back, and school opening was delayed for another year. Qualified Wisconsin teachers were hard to come by in Liberty Grove Township in 1865. The clerk spent many months searching for a qualified teacher, finally giving up and quitting his job. This is where Hans Gunderson again came to the rescue. He was successful in securing H.C. Wilson as a teacher, and the first term began in September of 1867. Pleased with its success in finding a teacher, the board decided to split the school year into a fall and spring term. And in 1868, when teachers apparently became more plentiful, a young lady named Emma Goodletson was hired for the spring term. Wilson was retained for the fall term, but was forced to take a salary cut. Both he and Miss Goodletson were paid $25 a month, $5 less than Wilson's first starting wage, but still it was 5 times more than the janitor was making. There was really no need for gym classes in those days, as students from every direction traveled on mere footpaths as well as the regulation road, some from as far as 12 miles away, leaving home at daylight and returning after dark. No attendance records were kept throughout the first 14 years of service the little log building served as a school. In 1881, the school closed due to the increasing attendance. Other schools had been built at Appleport, Wildwood, Rowley's Bay. School number 2 was no longer used. It stood an empty school for many years. Records show that the town purchased a government lot for $1 just north of Sister Bay Motors and moved the building to that site. Now, anybody that grew up in Sister Bay, Elsa Bay, around, we know where Sister Bay Motors was. I don't know if everyone does, but it's on Highway 42, like at the bottom of Hill Road. And it's possible that it even was the house that was the Sigerson's house. I think Fred might know a little bit more about that. But anyway, it stood there for a while, and then from there it was moved to the nearby Archie Sequist property and remodeled as a summer cottage. The walls were covered with a dark stained beaver board, and a lean-to was added to one side. For a time, Sequist himself lived in it, and then during the summer, it later was rented to tourists who apparently didn't mind roughing it. The building had no modern conveniences. This place where it was moved, where Archie Sequist is, I'd explain it as was across from Rudy's, because that's where we all knew, kitty corner across, or JJ's, but I think it's now where the big building is, where they have the harbor down there. And my friend Laverne lived just up the road from there, and she said that in the summertime, the Blondie boys would stay there. I don't know if they worked for Angry Sam or they worked for somebody, and they would, for the Hubbards, right. And they would stay there. Probably know that too. Later, Leonard Swenson was determined to save the unattended structure from falling apart and had the structure moved to a site near the town hall, where it was regarded more as an eyesore than a valuable treasure. I can remember seeing that there by that building, by the town hall, which is the town hall was the building that is, I don't know what it is now, but it's on the corner, right on kitty corner from Sister Bay Motors.
Was ecology school.
Yeah.
It was ecology and base camp.
Okay. He approached the Sister Bay Women's Club, Sister Bay and Liberty Grove Town Boards, and the Door County Historical Society. Swenson's pleas to not let the building go down the drain were given a sympathetic ear. but nothing was offered in the way of financial assistance. All were involved in their own projects. It wasn't until 1974, the year of the American bicentennial rolled around, that the schoolhouse was again brought to life. Swenson had died in 1964, long before the fruition of his decade-old dream became a reality. But he would be very pleased with the end result, and the fact that it was a combined effort of residents in both Liberty Grove and Sister Bay. They and the members of the Door County Historical Society brought the once rugged building back to life. Don Erickson, the contractor for the project of restoring it, said he had only 4 stark walls to work with. The floor and the roof had rotted away. The windows and doors were past repair, and the walls themselves were in less than perfect condition. The building that Hans Gunderson built for $100 cost $8,000 to restore. In putting this program together, I couldn't help but wonder why Leonard Swenson was so determined to have it restored. I do have that Sister Bay book, and I have read that, but he doesn't say anything in there why it was, why they wanted it. So, and then the fact that the building, they thought it was located near Three Springs. Now, Three Springs is a nature reserve. It's about maybe half a mile from where Old Stage Road and ZZ meet, from down the road from Appleport School. I was curious of what that was all about. And one day my daughter and her husband came home, and they had walked the trails of Three Spring Nature Reserve, and they were fascinated by that. In fact, they're the ones who took these pictures. They loved the old log buildings on the property, and they said it had been the Erickson homestead. So my question was, what Erickson? So I went to the Door County Land Trust site and found that Three Springs property was first settled by Franz and Edda Erickson family in the late 1850s. Mary Sequist is the oldest daughter of the Erickson family, and her husband actually took the ownership of the property next. And then in 1940, they sold it to Harold and Vera Wilson from Ephraim. And he ran it for 4 years as the state's first nature preserve at Three Springs. I also found in the newspapers that friends of theirs would stay there, so they must have restored the buildings and everything too. But then in 1970, the property was sold to George and Jean Reynolds, who in 2008 sold it to the Door County Land Trust for permanent protection and for everyone to enjoy. It looks like beautiful property. They say it's a wonderful place to hike. Now back to Leonard and more research. I went to the obituaries and found that Leonard's parents were Frank and Hannah Swenson. Then I went to find their obituary, and in finding there, I hit the jackpot. Leonard Swenson's mother was the daughter of Gust and Edda Erickson. He has a different name here, but that's not unusual. The names would be changed. They were the ones that homesteaded Three Springs. She was born in Stockholm, Sweden, November 11th, 1866, to Gust and Edda Erickson. The following June, the family came to America and lived in Chicago until August 1877, when they came to Three Springs. The father had come a few years earlier and homesteaded Three Springs. A daughter, Mary, 1 year older, had married Carl Sequist, whose son was John, who's the father of Dale Sequist. In an article by Keita Steves in 1979, when the building had been restored, the biggest question was who would know the right origin. And because not too many people were around in 1877, the question became increasingly difficult to answer. John Sequist, now remember he was the son of Carl and the father of Dale. He believed his mother, and he called her Lydia, but she's also called Mary other places. He believed she attended the log school. And then Emery Swenson, who was the brother of Leonard, is sure that two of his aunts were students there long before the turn of the century. Neither one was sure of the original location. So the search goes on. I'm going to move on to more schools now. This is the Appleport School. In 1882, land was purchased in Section 3 of School District 2 from Carl and Sophia Carlson. The first school was built in 1882, and in 1904, an additional acre to the east was purchased and land was replaced by a frame building, and the building was replaced by a frame building. As classes grew, a second story was added, and in 1914, more land was purchased to the east from Henry and Gertrude Johnson. The old building was torn down, and the new school building was built. There's a few pictures of students from 1915 and 1955. The old building, it closed in 1962-63. But then after a year was open again for 3 years to house the kindergarten students. And these were the first kindergarten students in the area. I have two nephews on there. After being closed the year, when it opened up, Eunice Rutherford became the teacher the first year, and the students were transported by Bayview buses. The kindergarten was only available to Ephraim and Liberty Grove Township students during the first 2 years of operation. Sister Bay residents were able to send their children to kindergarten on a tuition basis that year. The next 2 years, Mrs. George Annette Erickson taught the students. With further consolidation, the kindergarten was moved to Ephraim, and by 1985, all the rural schools were closed and moved to Fish Creek. The Ephraim kindergarten closed in 1988, just before Christmas, and moved to Fish Creek. Land was purchased in 1873 from Frederick and Bertha Smith in Section 17 on Highway 57 north of Highway Q. This picture is very poor. It's because it's a copy of a copy. It came out of some book. Don't know who has an original of it. But it was erected in 1878, and it's still standing because it's had many additions made to it. Here it is today. Marcy Birmingham from Sturgeon Bay wrote a lot of memories through her family, and she wrote about living in it when her father ran the cheese factory. And this became a cheese factory, and I think Melvin Kramer might have also been at this cheese factory. I'm not sure, but I think he was. But anyway, it has been added onto, and then one wall there was all these windows, and she was always wondering, what are all these windows? Why were they there? And it was much later she learned that it had been a school. And she said her mother had lavender curtains that covered them. Marcy attended the second Mabel Girls School. In 1916, they built this school on the corner of German Road and Highway 57. And it's still there, and it's a private residence. Liberty Girls School had many names. It was called Liberty School, German Settlement School, or Liberty Girls School. Here are a few students from 1916 and 1957. Now we go to Wildwood. Wildwood was also known as Byers School and Locust Grove, and then it went back to Wildwood School. This also had two locations. The first location was on the northeast corner of Waters End Road and Old Stage Road. Then in 1922, 3.5 acres of land was purchased from John and Amanda Lundquist. in section 33. The new school was one of the last schools to have classes. High school classes were held here for several years in the late 40s. My oldest sister told me she went to high school here for 1 year and then on to Gibraltar. In 1972, the building and property was sold to the town of Liberty Grove, and the building was torn down. I always like to include a few pictures of kids in the school. Some of you might recognize a few of them because some of these aren't that old, 1956. At least I don't think that's old. The Raleigh's Bay School. This was on the southwest corner of section 26, and it was built in 1878. It began as a log structure and later was framed. A former student reported that there was no fence around the school and the cows roamed around and often peeked in the windows. The school is long gone, but there was a replica at Raleigh's Bay Resort. And this also, the bell is the original bell that came from the Raleigh's Bay School. And it was used for the fish boil, to begin the fish boil. Unfortunately, the resort burned in the summer of 2023. I took this photo of the building in 2022. Didn't realize until I was doing this that that was 100 years from the time the Raleigh's Bay School consolidated in 1922 with Wildwood School. And then some of the students also went to Elson Bay. The first building before 1877 in Elson Bay was a log building located south of Rickert Store, now known as the Pioneer Store. It was part of the Bergman home for many years, but has been torn down now. Then land was purchased a little farther down on the northeast corner of section 15 in 1879 from John and Carolyn Eliason to build a new school. The school was held there for about 44 years when the new school was built. And that's the one on the top. And on the photo, you'll see the two doors for the school. And one was for the boys to go in and one was for the girls to go in. This building is still there, and it is now the Savory Spoon Cooking School. And the last I looked, they still had the two doors, which is, I think is pretty neat. In 1923, more land was purchased up on section 11 from Wilhelmina Jacobson, and a schoolhouse was built. This also was a Fred Crandall design. In 1940, additional land was purchased, and then Jens Jensen planned the school grounds in 1925. There is still the remains of a stone fence ring built in the woods north where the school was located. From 1924 to 1941, Elson Bay had 2 years of high school with grades 1 through 10 in the building. Grades 11 and 12 attended Gibraltar, with parents paying tuition, paying transportation, and tuition paid by towns. Often students would go to Sturgeon Bay to go to high school and board with a family there. My mother lived in Newport, and so she came to Elson Bay for high school, and she boarded with the Telfer family while she attended 2 years of high school here. This is also the school I attended for 8 years. More pictures of kids. This is the first Newport school, and this too had the two doors. And it faced Timberline Road. And this photo is from early years at Newport. And my grandmother, who was born in 1892, is on the photo. My mother also went here until 1924, until she was 10, when a new school was built. During the building of the new school, they attended classes at the Baptist church down the road. The new school was built in 1924, and like the Elson Bay School, it was a Fred Crandall design. He designed many schools in Door County, but the two that I know for sure are Elson Bay and Newport. This one faced Europe Bay Road. In 1954, due to a lack of students, Newport consolidated with Elson Bay. Elson Bay was chosen to have the school because of the location. The children were bused to Elson Bay, and the Newport school was sold and became Uncle Tom's Candy Shop, which it still is today. In 1909, School District 7 of Liberty Grove purchased land from Andrew and Leona Razor to build a new school. Sister Bay was part of Liberty Grove until 1912, when Sister Bay became a village. The school was a two-room school. The new addition was added in 1956. Here's students in 1912. In 1985, the property was sold to the village of Sister Bay. I think I heard that it was first hoped that they'd be able to move that building down here to the corner of the past. But it didn't happen, and it was torn down and made room for condos. Here's some students from the 60s in Sister Bay School. The last teachers in Sister Bay in 1983 were June Metallison for special ed, Eunice Rutherford, grade 2, Lucille Koska, grade 1, Nancy Akerley, grade 3, and Mark Hunold, grade 4. I have an interesting thing with this one too, is Lucille Koska, the one in the middle, was my first grade teacher in Elson Bay when she was Miss Mickelson. And we spent one school year here. My husband was in the Navy and he was gone, and we spent a school year here. And my youngest daughter, Stacy, was in first grade and had Mrs. Koska, same teacher I had 20-some years later. Okay, I thought this was a neat picture of a teacher's meeting from 1917. I don't know if they look really happy. I thought, these look much happier. Of course, that wasn't a meeting, they were just having fun. Everyone loved when the bookmobile came. And it's so neat to see that on the road again. And I think we're gonna have some really neat things happening with that bookmobile. When we graduated from high school, or when we graduated from 8th grade, all the students from the rural schools came to Sturgeon Bay High School auditorium for graduation. The Sturgeon Bay High School at that time was located where the fire department, police station, and city hall are right now. Actually just kitty corner across from our museum. After the graduation ceremony, we all walked over to St. Joseph Catholic Church and had a group picture taken. I think this happened until about 1960, when there started more of the consolidations. I saw one of the schools, somebody brought in a photo of an 8th grade class in 1960 that had a picture taken of them because they didn't have a graduation like we all had. Then on to high school. In 1917, the great topic of discussion was not the war, nor was it the weather or the approaching spring work. It was, where will the high school be built? Fish Creek, Ephraim, and Bailey's Harbor all wanted it. There was a lot of discussion, and finally the vote went to Fish Creek. On September 22nd, 1918, the new Gibraltar Union Free High School was dedicated. There were 38 students enrolled in the new school, 27 from Gibraltar, 4 from Sister Bay, 2 from Liberty Grove, 1 from Sebastopol, and 1 from outside the county. There was room for about 100 in the school, so there was no danger of overcrowding at the time. And now all students from Northern Door attend at Gibraltar. And I don't know how many times they've added on, and they're adding on again. It's wonderful. We have a lot of yearbooks and things at the museum, and we actually have from the first year, 1920, when it was called the Gibraltar Gems. And then it was the Rock for a while, and the 4 on the bottom were the era that I went to school, and they were called the Viking, but I don't know if it's still called the Viking today. Anybody know? This is our display at the Historical Museum. It's down in the lower level. All the schools are on display there at 18 North 4th Avenue. Stop in and see the whole exhibit. We have 6 large binders. I have 2 of them over here. These 2 cover anything we've gotten in from the Northern Door schools. From the Northern Door schools. And they've tabbed with the town, so you can look through. We also have one from Washington Island, so actually we have 7 binders. We're always looking for more information, more photos, to preserve the memory of all our rural schools. It's a delight to be able to share with people looking for information. We have a lot of people that come in and ask about a certain family, or I think my parents went to a school that was maybe in the country someplace, and we can usually help find where they were. So it's a delight to have. We do not need the originals. We can scan in pictures and give you back your originals if you want them. All photos, stories, memories are important to preserve for future generations. Our museum is open from 10 to 4:30, Tuesday through Saturday, and we are planning now to be open year-round. So please stop and see us. There's no charge to go through our museum. Donations are appreciated, and we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyla. So what we want to do now is hear some of the stories that you all have of your attendance at some of these schools. So anybody want to start with a recollection?
Yes.
Right here.
Hi, everybody. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah. Most people can hear me without this. My name is Sharon Dobner-Dorshing. My mother was a teacher from the early 1930s. She taught at Fish Creek. She taught at Elson Bay and Sister Bay were the main part of her career. Her first job was Juddville, which was all 8 grades in one room. That was like pioneer days, and she had about 40 children, as well as in Pershing School, which is up in that area of the county. But she said it was very difficult to get a job as a woman. It was a major occupation of men in the early years for elementary, which is unusual today. We'd like to see more men, in the elementary grades. And she said, I remember her going to teach in those schools, and she had 4 grades in the 2-room schools, and she was 1 to 4. And she said she was there until about 6:37 at night. My father was a commercial fisherman down in Gills Rock, because everything was on the blackboard, written out very, the runoff machine, the ones you remember from your childhood with the very earliest with the purple ink and all of that. She had to write out on blackboards all the lessons for the next day, like all the English sentences, and now you put in the commas. Erased that night and written out again. The same with your math problems. So it's one step up from the blackboard, from the slate, but not a lot for kids doing their work. She said when she came to Sister Bay School, and for the end of her career, that was almost 40 years in those schools, it was her joy that she got 1 grade in 1 room. She taught 4th grade. The picture of Mark Donald when it closed, he was her student teacher. And he got the job when she retired at Sister Bay School. And interestingly, I became a teacher went to all those schools, went to Gibraltar, went to Wildwood, and went to Gibraltar. And I ended my 35-year career teaching right back in a classroom I had gone to in Gibraltar, but I followed my mother. But I remember so much of those early years of her teaching, and the reason she really got a job that lasted was World War II. The male teachers were all drafted right out of the classrooms and had to go to war. And women, she had gotten her teaching degree was 2 years at Stevens Point. Today it's part of the university system. It was Teachers College at the time. There was another school in Algoma, which was called the Normal School. It was 1 year to train to become a teacher. And she was like a big deal with 2 years of education. Later she went on and finished her degree and her master's degree. And Phyllis Larson and she and other teachers drove to Oshkosh, was the closest college to go to. After teaching, they go down for a night course and drive back, because Green Bay wasn't, UW Green Bay was not there yet. But I have so many recollections of the nights of her getting home late and going and helping her put up bulletin boards and that, and especially when I was in college studying to become a teacher, I had to go help that. But I have, this is a wonderful story. Nyla's my cousin.
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
and everything she said is, you know, it's just a wonderful history of the schools, but I really did live through it. I'm old as dirt.
Thank you, Sharon. Who else? Mary Jo?
Maybe later.
Maybe later. Okay, Linda? Some of you who went to those schools. Brad? Somebody's got Steve, Debbie?
Does anybody here remember taking goiter pills? I guess we were lacking iodine if they was something. There was always one in the class that would take a few extra.
Was that iron, iodine? What was that? They thought we didn't have enough.
I think it was iron. I think it was iron, yeah.
They were
Yeah.
brown.
A little brown. You could have chalky, kind of chalky.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
John, okay.
I knew Leonard Swenson and Lucille Mickelson, but I did not go to Gibraltar, so that doesn't really count. But I would like to ask, there are a couple of gals here and guys who did go to Gibraltar, and so we're going to ask them to lead us in a Gibraltar song, if you will. Can you do that? Come on.
You sang it beautifully, do it. Oh, Connie, you're such a show-off.
Fight for victory. We're the mighty Vikings and we'll win this game, you see. Yo, rock, rock. We're going to really glorify our name, and we will bring our mighty boys to blue and gold right on to fame.
I'm not going to sing what ours was different when we went there. You know, it was Gibraltar High School is our pride. But you would remember, you probably could sing it. But every basketball game we went to at a different school, I forget what it was to the tune of. They could never play it, and they played it about an octave higher than we could sing it. So it's fun when it was good they changed it.
So did anybody ever remember David Lee as a teacher? A couple of hands up. So, you know, Sharon, you mentioned Mark Hunnell. I ran into him at a Door County Historical Society event and invited him to come, but he was on a trip, he couldn't make it, but he remembered David Lee. We were talking about him. So for the rest of the crowd, to the extent that he's not known by everybody, David Lee is the local high school science teacher who, when the Anderson House was going to be torn down at the end of 1993, David Lee is the guy who intervened and said, you know, I've got some roofing experience. Maybe I could bring this thing back. And if you look at the way that building looked at that time, you could say that David Lee was a man of vision. And the rest of his story real quick, and others jump in here, but David asked the village again to give him the money that they would have used to tear the building down, and he would begin to re-roof it. And he began to do that with some of his students and others in the community. And most unfortunately, like 6 months into the project, David died. But his work was carried on by the newly formed Sister Bay Historical Society, and there is a plaque on the front of the Anderson House in memory of David Lee.
It's a beautiful story.
Any others, other stories? Share? Oh, good, Mary Jo, good.
Oh, no, if there's somebody else, that's fine.
I was just going to ask if anybody remembers how we used to have Christmas plays.
Oh,
Yeah.
And we had to walk down every Friday from grade school down to the Sister Bay Village Hall for practice at that stage, whatever. And then, of course, we had our play, which was cool. Also, another favorite memory is the Thursday or Friday of Fall Festival weekend. The carnival would come down, I think it was 57, and we could see it out the windows of the grade school, and of course you just couldn't concentrate on class because the carnival was coming to town, and the whole weekend was just, you know, so much fun. And those people from the carnival treated you like their own family. And one other fun memory is we used to have in the basement of the Sister Bay grade school, they did a Halloween thing in the furnace room, which was scary anyway, with spiders and whatever. I mean, it was just things like that you think of and go, oh my gosh. I have to say, I loved that we could do all 8 years in a grade school in the one town. And then you met all these kids from the other schools when you were freshmen in high school. But also, I lived right down below the hill from the Sister Bay grade school, across the street from Belgia's sister. And we would do anything not to walk up the hill to go to school and have either one of our mothers have to drive us practically every day. It was just whatever.
Do you have anything?
No.
Anyway.
Thank you,
Anybody else?
Mary Jo reminded me of something. We were arch rivals with each other in those days. We were arch rivals with Ellison Bay, Sister Bay, Wildwood, Rayleigh's Harbor. We didn't have to go out of the northern end of the community because every little school had a baseball team or softball team and basketball. Football wasn't in yet with pads on little kids like they are today. But you get out about a half a day to go over to Appleport from Wildwood to play, you know, on a Friday afternoon and go up to Sister Bay, all the way down to Newport School, where my dad graduated from. And the same was true. We had cheerleaders, and we had our own colors of each of those schools, like high schools have today, you know, and how our high schools are now arch rivals around here. So are our grade schools, but it is true that our closest knit friends were in that school, in that town. She mentioned Fall Fest. We all got out, all the neighboring schools, at noon on Friday to go to town, a Fall Fest, because you went up and down all the stores and registered for a prize in each store, and it was a half a day of school. Imagine, that was our big holiday. But
it was so much fun.
of course it was. But I wanted to ask, how many here have a relative, friend, have anyone connected to the Newport School? Is there anyone here?
Yeah.
How about the Ellison Bay School? Not necessarily you, maybe a parent or a friend or a relative. Wildwood. Sister Bay. Yeah. Liberty School, right over here. This is, everybody in here has a connection to one of the schools I think she mentioned. Did I forget any of them that you?
Well, there was Rowley's Bay, I don't think.
Oh, Rowley's Bay. Did anyone go to that? Or know somebody that went to the little Rowley's Bay school? It joined Wildwood.
I don't know, Appleport, did you mention it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I saw, everybody's hand in here is somehow related to one of those schools.
Good, I'm glad you did that. Okay, here we go.
I'm just wondering if anyone remembers the School of the Air, when the University of Wisconsin would have programs on science or music or art, and it would come out of the big radio, and it would be, everybody put your things away, it is now time for School of the Air. Nobody remembers it? Nobody does.
No,
It was fun, I loved it.
Mothers in here?
I remember the end of the school picnic. It would be the Sunday after school ended, and everybody from town came. And you didn't have to have kids in school. Everybody came. All the mothers brought a big bowl of whatever was their favorite thing. And we had ice cream. You could give as many ice cream cones as you wanted. One of the teachers was scooping it. And the boys and the dads would play baseball, and we had other games we played. But it wasn't like just school, it was the whole town was there. That was really neat. And I also remember walking down to the library. We didn't have the bookmobile in Sister Bay, they didn't come. But we would, every couple of weeks, the whole class would walk down to the library, get your books. And then from the library, we could go home, which was the end of the day.
I went to Ellison Bay for the first 6 years, and third and fourth grade, I was the only girl in my class. And when I got to fifth grade, Wildwood School closed, and I had 3 other girls in my class. It was so exciting.
Who else? Anybody?
Anybody remember going to Appleport with Lester Newman? I had Lester Newman at Appleport.
Did you?
We were at the start of the consolidation. I went to Appleport for 6th grade, went back to Wildwood for 7th and 8th. We were the first years of consolidation.
And Lester Newman is in the book, so if you don't have the book about Appleport School, you need to pick that up.
Fred, you want to give us the story on where the original schoolhouse really was located? Come on, tell us what you believe the story is.
I had always heard that it was originally on the corner of Hill Road across from the town hall. I was never told that it had been moved there. The story was that it wasn't built there. I know it was there.
well,
And
in
then it
this,
got moved to
yeah, in the article that Keita Steves wrote, there's other articles. I've taken these out of the advocates that are online. And they say it's on the road, main road that came from Bailey's Harbor to Sister Bay. I don't know. But I know it was next to it was on the Segerson property, wasn't it?
Right.
Next to your house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they bought the lot for $1, but that was after it was like 14 years of school. The way we're reading it, I don't know, I can't go
Maybe
back
it
to.
wasn't built out there. I have never heard that, though. I was always told it was built on the corner there.
Okay,
That's the
Maybe it
little
is.
log cabin.
Maybe
I
it
think
is.
you're thinking of the little log cabin that we have now. That's school. That was
Right.
for everybody at the time. And it was out at 3 Springs definitely, but it got moved to where you're talking about.
Yeah, I was never told that.
do you think it was at 3 Springs?
Yes, yes it was. I mean, my mother was on the historical committee at the store.
Yeah, and
The log,
Ted, your dad was too.
yeah,
Your dad was on that committee.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
It was with my mom.
He never did listen.
All right. Any last calls? Those are great stories, by the way, and great song. Any
remember the rivalry in the different schools. And one time, this is maybe not a good story to tell, but, but it's true. We were playing basketball, or baseball, when I was in Nelson Bay. I was there just for 6th grade, and the rest of the time was at Wildwood. But Dick Koska didn't like the way the game was going, and he took the ball and went in.
So you actually went to LCA school? Just 1 year, okay. Okay, that's interesting. I know they were sending kids all over. Yeah.
Mary Jo, another story.
I was talking to Karen Sundstrom's husband, who went to grade school with me in my class. And we were talking about how his mother, Bernice, which was Bernice Sundstrom, she went to Petersky, Elvina Lundquist, how these ladies would, they were called 4-H classes, so to speak, and they would, you know, after school, you'd have either a cooking class or a sewing class, whatever. They did it for the guys, they did it for the girls. But I was telling Gene, I had sewing with his mother.
So did I.
And to this day, I can't look at a material, and if the stripes don't match or the plaids don't match, it really bothers me. And she taught me this.
Wow.
But I just thought they were so wonderful with their time and volunteering to do that and stuff.
Well, was that the 4-H club?
I believe so.
Yeah, because we had that.
We had it.
We had that too in LCA.
That was just
Yeah.
super.
Yeah. Fun times. I always kind of use an example of something too. I have a best friend, my best friend in high school, and I have been traveling quite a bit. We both have lost our husbands, and so we do trips together. She grew up in Sister Bay, actually across from JJ's, and or from Rudy's. And I grew up in Nelson Bay. I clocked it one day. It's 4 miles. We did not know each other until we went to high school. Yeah. She went to Wildwood, I went to Nelson Bay. She went to one church, I went to another one. So, yeah. Interesting. And now you can go anywhere.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up and give Nyla Small one last round.